Namibians have expressed growing concerns over the sale of our natural resources in the name of development. Eco-warrior and investigative journalist John Grobler recently returned from a trip to the Okavango Delta, where Canadian-based Reconnaissance Africa is said to have bought 35,000 square kilometers of the Okavango Basin and begun drilling for oil.
Well, it's been something that's been coming for a while. I mean, we first saw those presentations being circulated about 2 years ago, in 2018, maybe early 2019. Didn't pay much attention because, you know, it seemed quite implausible what they were proposing to do there because of the environmental risks. And it all seemed sort of a pipe dream until October, November last year, when suddenly this whole thing started becoming a reality. I'd been working in the Okavango East on the Rosewood investigation, and of course I immediately started picking up that there was a site being prepared, more than one site, 3 of those in fact. And I have now been back in December and last month, January as well, a week every time, just to go and have a closer look at what is going on. I also attended the public meetings that Risk-Based Solutions held 10 days ago in Rundu to brief the public on what they were doing, and now kind of formed a full picture of what is going on. What we have here is potentially a game changer, in economic terms. If they should find oil, let me say that right from the beginning. But at the same time, it is something that poses a huge potential threat to the entire Okavango ecosystem. Where they are drilling at the moment on the western banks of the Umurambo-Umutako is only about 40 kilometers away from the Okavango River, and the Umurambo-Umutako actually drains into the Okavango River. So anything that gets spilled there or enters the groundwater there, in due course will work its way into the larger Okavango ecosystem, and that has major implications for the entire region, because 10 liters of petrol will probably poison 1 million liters of water. It is an extremely poisonous substance that is only good for the inside of your car's engine and nothing else. So there's concern about the intent, especially the secret way they've been approaching this. The first briefings on their plans appear to have been confined to a select inside group of Okavango politicians and businessmen and so forth, by invitation only. They claim this was their public meeting for the start of their actual stratigraphic drilling program. It is not adequate, I think. They now are presenting the EIA for just the seismic testing, and even there they're being quite economical with the truth. They maintain that this is a non-intrusive work, which they do by basically having this huge machine that positions this aluminium dome on the ground and then whacks it very hard with a hydraulic hammer that sends a 300 megahertz pulse into the earth, which is then detected with little detectors all over to determine the profile of the substructures. Now this has major implications for, first of all, the elephant population in the area, and secondly, if they do these things quite too close to any of the local homesteads or boreholes, that could result in damage to the houses and cause the boreholes to collapse. MIA maintains there are no elephants in this area, but that's patently untrue, because the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism has just issued a tender for the capture, cull and removal of 90 elephants in that very same area. So it looks like they're kind of clearing out the area on behalf of Recon Africa. There is also other major concerns in there about the ongoing operation. At Kawe, they have started drilling early January, got about 300 meters, and then apparently it stopped when I got there, and I'd been to the site 3-4 times in January now. Apart from my first visit in December, I returned to the same area, and I spent like a week in the area of Mkate, Mbambi, Kawe, where the first three main drill sites had to be situated. Now, what I discovered at Kawe, first of all, is that they had occupied a part of a local farmer's mahangu fields without prior warning, without notification, without any office of compensation. They now have their drill equipment, their drill site, within a distance of 150 meters from, Andreas Awana's homestead, and that doesn't seem right to me, especially that they didn't warn him about this. They admitted in an interview to me last Friday that they'd picked that position because of its optimum position at a point where they think the Okavango sediment basin is at its deepest. So the places they picked was determined by the geology, not by local consultation with affected parties.
Another concerned citizen posted this video online.
For that, writing in newspaper media saying the drilling point is far from communities, they just come to the drilling point and they drive away, and they write that this is far from community. Communities are just next to the drilling point.
Investigative journalist John Grobler recently consulted with communities that have been affected by the drilling operations of Recon Africa in the Okavango, and said that many farmers had not been adequately informed, consulted, nor compensated for their land, which the company is operating on.
There's also been major problems ever since the EIA meetings in Rundu on Friday. They were supposed to have held community meetings with all the affected communities throughout the region. So, there was a meeting that was supposed to happen on Saturday with the Mbambi community. We waited 3 hours before Alois Gende pitched there and informed us that the meeting had been cancelled because there was some problem with the quarrying arrangement to build the site. The community, of course, wanted to discuss the fact that one of their members' land was basically usurped by Recon Africa, and it doesn't look like that there was a proper process followed in this. Recon Africa says they had followed every step of the legal process. They had approached us through the governor's office and then met with the traditional authority, and they had, according to them, a valid permission to occupy agreement for this area. That seems implausible because the relevant traditional authority, the Samyu traditional authority here, has not had a fully formally recognized chief headman Fumu for 2 years now. Alois Gende was about to marry Mutemba Rebebe, the previous Fumu, and then 2 weeks before the marriage, she died suddenly. But somehow he had all these agreements in place, so I really would like to see those agreements with my own eyes. I've asked Record Africa to share those with me, and while they initially agreed that they would do so, they then later backtracked on this. And they appear to be not too sure of their position here, because I think they may not be getting the full facts from their own people on the ground. The major problem here is just complete lack of consultation. This is a top-down project which Recon Africa says will bring employment opportunities for the first time to the Okavango East region. And that, of course, is also not entirely true, because the Okavango East and West have a huge tourism industry that employs thousands of people, more people than Recon Africa will likely ever employ. At the moment, they're only employing about 17 people from Kawe area, and most of those actually appear to be from the Kaute area, which is further away. Andreas Awana's son, Mawana, like living right next door to the drill site, he's not even had an opportunity to get like one of the weekly hires they do. They hire 6 people every week as casual laborers, and he's not even had a opportunity to get hired in. There's just no consultation. Recon Africa claims that field was not used for at least 20 years. Now, they hadn't been there 20 years ago. And as we all know, in Okavango, because the soil is so poor, people will plant mango and then leave the land lying fallow for up to 4 or 5 years before they plant again, because the yield is so poor. You have to let the soil, recover. So I confirmed with the local headman and Daniel Ofike that that piece of land was allocated to Andreas Hawano in 2014, and then he had been farming there. And you can actually see his fields on either side of the road. This apparently did not stop Reckon Africa from just occupying a part of his field to put up their first drill site. So one wonders what's going to happen here. I mean, the people on the ground out there are largely not au fait with their rights under the Communal Land Reform Act Act 5 of 2002. And in that act, Article 36, it makes it very clear that the only way communal land can be usurped, can be expropriated from a current occupant is if it's for a purpose of a state construction project or a state-owned enterprise construction project for a clinic or hospital, for a school, for a church, or for some community project. No provision is made for private for-profit companies coming in and basically taking up large tracts of land in communal land, which is commonly owned and held in trust by the state. So they likely have legal problems there because their drilling program eventually, I think, if they do find oil, they will want to sink wells everywhere, and in each case around these wells, because of the fracking that they will be using to pump out the oil, they'll have to evacuate people in a 10-kilometer radius around that particular well, which is going to affect thousands of people. They claim that everything is empty out there, but if you've spent, like I have, just a little bit of time out there, you realize that there are people everywhere, all over. Just in Gauteng, in Kawe, there are over 4,000 registered voters. In Gauteng, more than double that. So if they have to start paying all of those people proper compensation, I don't think their project is going to be financially viable in the long run.
Mines Minister Tom Wendo was quoted recently as having said that he sees no problem with the research drilling as long as the environmental people are happy with the studies done. I put this to investigative journalist John Grobler.
The minister is making a mistake to take Sandile Mbuya's word for everything. A big mistake, because Sandile is being very, very economic with the truth. What he's doing is he is absolutely compartmentalizing the EIA. So he's telling us we're on the Zambezi River. We know the Vic Falls is just over there. We can hear it. We can see the mist. But he's telling us, no, don't worry. Look at how calm the water is just here in front of us. He doesn't want to present the overall intent of the study. He wants to basically slice it as thinly as possible. It's kind of a boiling the frog approach. So, they're going to tell us a little bit. There's an absolute control of information, especially from the ground up to the relevant authorities. So one wonders, how this will play out in the end. I don't think the minister has actually been to these sites, and I don't think he's actually, been to talk to any of the people down there. So I don't know how he can actually make these utterances, without the full facts of that. If he's relying on Sandile Mbuya's word, well, he ought to be warned that it is a very biased opinion that is absolutely focused and pushing through this EIA one way or another. Because, let's be clear, RBS, Sandile Mbuya, works for Reckon Africa, and he gets paid by Reckon Africa, as does Alois Gender. So all of these people, if they're informing the minister about the equanimity and fairness of their process, that should be taken by not just a pinch of salt, like a couple of bags of salt, basically.
Eco-warriors worldwide have condemned the disruptance of this pristine natural habitat, and a march to the Namibian High Commission in South Africa was held this week.
Yeah, well, the thing here, of course, is that the RBS, Reckon Africa, and the ministry claims that, People went to talking about this, have no locus standi, that we have no standing in this process because it's not we who are going to be affected, but we will be affected because whatever they're going to be doing up there has potentially huge impact on the future of tourism. If all of that area is suddenly going to be turned into an oil field with these pumps sitting everywhere, we've all seen what the oil fields of Alberta and Canada looks like. It is devastation, absolute devastation. There is nothing left at the end of the day. Oil is a hugely poisonous industry, and the fact that they are drilling on the banks of what is a tributary of the Okavango, like I said, poses a major threat eventually to the entire ecosystem. So, for example, they drill and they don't actually find anything, but they hit pockets of methane and some of that hypersaline Karoo sediment, which is really salty water. If the casing starts leaking at some point, that stuff is going to get into the groundwater. The groundwater up there is very shallow because the substructure is very porous. So it will migrate very quickly into the surrounding areas and will find its way into the Umaramba, Mataku, and in due course will of course find its way all the way down to the Okavango Delta, even though that may take 10, 15 years from now, but then they're not going to be around anymore to hold responsible because, well, I mean, they drilled, they didn't find any oil, they close the company down and they walk away. So we're not being presented with a full picture here. We're being asked to just look at this tiny picture and a tiny picture here and to ignore the bigger frame here. And that is something that they need to be pulled up for. The EIA process so far has major problems. There wasn't a public consultation process in respect of the first stratigraphic drilling. Now they want to do an EIA just about on the seismic testing, which is non-intrusive, but it kind of ignores what the risk is of the stratigraphic drilling. They don't want to talk about land claims because they claim they made their deals with the Samyu Traditional Authority. The Samyu Traditional Authority doesn't have a FUMU, and the head woman who signed this agreement for them does not have the authority to do so. Usurping communal land requires the meeting of a full traditional council with minutes kept and all of that, and a full due process as described under the Communal Land Act, and they have been ignoring all of that. So they're kind of riding roughshod over all the concerns, and the only thing we can do is perhaps to motivate civil society to make itself heard. The problem is that because of the COVID, all the meetings are restricted to 50 people only. So, and what Muya does during these meetings, he talks for most of the time. He's proud of the fact that he can talk any question to death, basically. He just throws stuff at you, so much snow that you kind of forgot what it is you originally asked him about. However, I remember these things, and so I ask him again, and he never really answers any questions. And it is a problem. It is a real problem. I don't know if they are the right people to be doing this. I think there should be a much more independent environmental consultant with a proven track record, not just having participated in previous studies, because what he appears to be doing is he is seemingly recycling a lot of previous work he had done, because according to the presentations, he had done his first work on these structures back in 2010, I guess is when he had just started out, and had been involved in various other studies, 3, 4 of them that were listed on the notice boards there, or in the information boards that they put out. So he appears to be just recycling information that is already done. There is no fresh research being done now on the ground with the relevant people. And that is a major flaw. It's a major flaw. And it's just one of many in the entire process so far. So, yeah, and it is a major threat to the bigger ecosystem there, not just the people of Kaba and Kauta and Bambi and their groundwater and the fact that they might get pushed off the land, but it is a potential threat to the entire Okavango ecosystem. And that is something they don't want to acknowledge at all.
The manner in which our governments, under the guise of protecting flora and fauna, use that same fauna and flora for their own financial gain is just another bone of contention. I put this to John.
Well, you know, what it is that we both know Zimbabwe is in deep political trouble. And in the 2019 elections, the Okavango vote is what pulled them through, especially the Okavango rural vote. Out there in those areas, people voted 99% for SWAPO, even though everywhere else the support had waned massively. So it's clear to me that SWAPO is relying on this thing coming off somehow and generating new interest and new support from their greedy supporters who all want to be, have a cut in this little, this new business, and they're hoping that this is going to pull things through for them by the next election. So, yeah, you can be pretty sure, I think, that, they will try and push this as much as they can to be able to tell us before the next general elections that we brought oil to Namibia, And here's the thing, I was challenged, repeatedly by Reckon Africa to state my position on the oil exploration then. While I try and keep an open mind about it, I know this about oil in Africa. It has really been very, very bad for democracy in every African country so far. Discovering oil puts billions of dollars into the elites' pockets, who often resort to completely illegal ways and extra legal ways and extra constitutional ways to hang on to power. We all know the history of Nigeria and all its various coups. That was all about access to the oil money. So this potential big pot that they hope they will, of gold that they hope they strike now, is basically, I think, what it is driving the process from that side anyway. They have made common cause with, Reckon Africa to try and find oil, because that will save them all from being kicked out of office, 2-3 years from now. And I think they will do everything in their power to make sure that happens, because for them to lose power is simply unthinkable.